Madam Chairman, first of all, can I congratulate the rapporteur on his report, and also, if I may say so, on his leadership of the delegation that went to Iceland, of which I was a member. I had not been to Iceland before and was not sure what to expect other than a rocky outcrop. In the event, it turned out to be a most extraordinary and fascinating place. And we met some fascinating and extraordinary politicians. And in that sense, I just want to pick out one or two points, if I may. I don't have any substantial differences of opinion with the rapporteur's report, or there might be an odd nuance here or there. But I just want to... We met, for example, the Minister for Fisheries, who seemed to me to be the most intransigent throwback to the 1950s sort of Stalinist era that I've ever come across in a democratic country. And he was quite clear that joining the European Union was going to happen over his dead body. And there were others of that sort of ilk. It's fair to say that the division of opinion within Iceland, when we were there, we were told the latest opinion poll showed a closing of the gap to almost 50-50 hostility and support, although previously it had been something like 75 to 80% opposed. And the one thing that struck me, and which I suggested over an informal dinner party to two of the more conservative leaders, the Liberal group leader and the centre-right group leader, was they don't seem to know whether they even want to put the application in, let alone whether they actually want to join. And it struck me that they ought to get their act together in terms of an application, because otherwise, if they're not even sure they want to apply, I know formally they have, or they're in the process of doing so, but the impression we had was they hadn't got a clue whether they were in favour of it or not. That they ought to hold a referendum to decide whether they wanted to apply, and then having decided whether they wanted to, and assuming that the referendum was supportive of the application, then they'd go through the negotiations, and in due course they would then put a referendum to their people about the terms of the deal. There was considerable confusion about this, and I'm still not entirely certain what their motivation is. As the rapporteur said, the main governing party is entirely in favour, whereas their compadre party in coalition, something we've grown to understand in Britain, was very much against. And indeed, when the matter came to vote in the Parliament, the government of the day, the coalition government, only won by one vote. And it was quite clear that the minority party was only voting reluctantly in favour in order to keep the government in power rather than any sense of conviction. So there is considerable division about what they want to do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dartmouth?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I've got just a couple of crisp points to make. First of all, I have to say, there seems maybe the translators got it wrong, but my distinguished colleague who's also a substitute seemed to make the remark that Iceland has got something to learn from the EU on sustainable fisheries. Well, that's what it came across in the translation, and I have to say that the concept that anything's got anything to learn from the EU, where we've had a fishing policy whereby dead fish have been put back in the water, and as a representative of the United Kingdom and the South West, the United Kingdom's fish stocks have been trashed by the EU, and our fishing industry has been destroyed. So I then come really to my next point, which is that Sir Robert Atkins, Privy Councillor, was very scathing about the views of the fishing minister in Iceland. He even described them as Stalinist. But I put it to you that it's an entirely credible point. It is at a minimum level, a credible point of view that if you are the fishing minister of Iceland and the Icelandic economy is dependent to a much greater measure on fishing than almost any other economy in the world, it is an entirely credible point of view to be a little bit quizzical, if I can put it that way, about Iceland joining the EU. And the gentleman certainly didn't deserve the epithet of Stalinist just because he happened to disagree with Sir Robert Atkins. I would also remind Sir Robert Atkins that Iceland has had a parliament for over 1,000 years, and it ill becomes somebody who is an MEP from a parliament that's only been going for a very, very short space of time to describe somebody who disagrees with him in those terms. Now, let me make a much more serious and much more profound point. Enlargement. Iceland is a candidate country. Now, the fact of the matter is that rich countries, like Norway and Switzerland, do not want to join the EU. Comparatively poor countries, like Croatia and Kosovo, and I guess Serbia, Montenegro, they do want to join the EU. Now, with Iceland, we have a very, very interesting example which supports that proposition. Iceland was a rich country and perceived itself as being a rich country. When it was a rich country, as Sir Robert Atkins said, it basically got 75 to 80% of the people were opposed to joining the EU. Then came the financial crisis, the 2008 financial collapse, which hit Iceland worse than almost any other country. Under those circumstances, when Iceland started to perceive itself as being a poor country, it then changed its mind, and there was quite a substantial plurality for Iceland to join the EU. Now, Iceland, because of the skill and inventiveness of its people, which has been mentioned before, and also, not least, because its fishing industry is sacrosanct, has made a remarkable and impressive recovery. It's even paying back money to the UK, which is an unusual concept in EU terms. And now it perceives itself as being a much better off country. The proportion of people in favour of joining the EU has gone down, roughly to 50-50. And as Iceland continues to progress and continues to be more prosperous, more and more people will actually be opposed to it. And I would say to the Icelandic people, in case you're thinking of joining the EU, don't do it. Your fishing stocks will be trashed. You will become a net contributor. You'll have to pay up to support countries like Kosovo. I would say don't do it. Ignore your politicians. And above all, you certainly ignore visiting politicians who call people who disagree with them Stalinist.
Yeah, would you allow me to clarify something?
Oui, patientez, s'il vous plaît, c'est ce que j'allais faire.
Just wait a minute. Thank you, Mr. Dartmouth. Of course, you're free to express yourself, and you've kept your speaking time. Mrs. Sargentini is going to briefly respond to you.
I'll speak in English now because I've learned that speaking in Dutch makes people confused. I represent the Greens, so if somebody understood that I'd say that Iceland should learn from us when it comes to sustainable fishing, please understand that that's the opposite of what I was trying to say. Thank you very much.
Merci.